Hey, what is going on, community and Culture Night friends? We are so excited for this month's edition of Community and Culture Night. We are so excited to have Andrew and Anna McGuire, good friends of mine, and their story we're so excited to share. So we're just going to wait just about another minute or so, give people an opportunity to hop on, and then we'll get going. All right. Well, we're starting to get some people, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know you guys are taking time out of your Thursday to be with us. So once again, my name is Nee. Just want to say thank you so much for being a part of Community Culture Night. It's been an awesome opportunity to be doing this, to get to meet really great, exciting, interesting people, and really hope to continue this in the future. We'll talk a little bit about what the kind of future looks like for us in this group as we try to navigate, a global pandemic. But we're really excited for what's to come. Super excited for tonight because we have dear friends of mine who are joining us, Andrew and Anna McGuire. I've known them for a few years now. They are an incredible couple. More than anything, they are entrepreneurial in spirit, and really more than anything, they just love people. And I hope that you guys get an opportunity to feel and experience that today. They're going to be doing two separate presentations, both on things that they've been working on, and I'm really excited for us to learn from them. So be ready to ask really good questions. Be ready to really work with them, ask questions, talk to them. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to hit us up in the chat. We'll make sure we get to them. If we can't wait, put that in there too. We'll make sure we ask it in the interview. But without further notice, it's not about me. We're going to go ahead and bring Andrew on. He's going to talk about his business that he started. So I'm going to give him the opportunity to introduce himself. So Andrew, I'm going to bring you up here in just a second, man, and I'm excited for you to share with us what's going on in your world.
Hey, thanks, Nee. Appreciate it.
And I'm going to take myself out.
All right. Man, it is such just huge pleasure to be with you guys tonight and just really talk about kind of my personal story and where the path has taken me to today. So if you, like Nee said, if you have any questions, I would just really encourage you to put them in the chat. One of my favorite things whenever I talk about the business that I've been able to start is just really helping people get an answer for their questions in it. So if you have any questions, make sure you drop those in the chat. But I really just want to share some of my background. So my name is Andrew. Currently, my wife and I, we live in Fishers, Indiana, which is like the northeast side of Indianapolis. I'm 28 years old. And about a year ago, I jumped into full-time e-commerce, and I started a business, and it's been just such an incredible journey. So I have that business, and then I also do a coaching business to help others basically launch their own profitable e-commerce business. So that's really what I do. But I grew up in a pastor's home. My whole life, my parents were pastors, and so I was involved in the church my entire life, and I absolutely loved it. It was such a passion of mine, and I really felt that one day I wanted to do ministry too. I wanted to be a part of a local church, and I really just wanted to serve a community and really make a difference in people's lives. And so that dream that I had also came parallel to a dream of one day owning a business. That's really what I wanted to do as a young kid. I was that kid that would sit on the corner of a neighborhood and sell lemonade to everybody who was going to a local garage sale, right? Like you've seen those kids, they have bakeries or they sell lemonade, right? Like that was me. I sold lemonade and I loved it. It just brought this energy to my life. And so I would do that. And then as I grew older, one of the things that was really funny is I loved video games growing up, and I would sell my video games to some of my friends for money, right? Because I had this joy of making money. And there were times where my they would sit me down and they would say, you know what, Andrew, like that was a gift and you sold it. Now you don't have your video game anymore. And I was like, yeah, but I got this money. Right. And so like, I love doing that. And even into high school, I would always go to summer camp every year with my youth group at our church. And every year we would go to summer camp. I would pack my suitcase, but then I would also pack a separate suitcase full of candy and soda and beef jerky. And at night, after like the snack shack, the concession stand had closed down, I would go into the room and I would sell all of my candy and drinks to all my friends and anybody at camp. And so I would make a ton of money doing that. I just always had like this entrepreneurial like spirit in me. And I had this dream of owning my own business. So I never knew exactly what that would look like, but I went to college in Springfield, Missouri, and that's actually where I met my very best friend, my now wife, who you're going to meet in just a few minutes, Anna. And so we met there and graduated in 2014. We got married in 2015, 2 weeks after she graduated. And from there, we became youth pastors. And I still had like that dream in my heart to one day own a business. And so we were youth pastors in Arkansas for about 6 months after we got married, and then transitioned to Indiana on the south side of Indianapolis. And we were youth pastors for several years after that. But there was always that dream of owning a business in my heart. And so really, I just began to like pray and really just seek the direction of what that would look like. And it was actually a little over a year ago, we really felt a transition in our journey. And we were blessed to know that we were pregnant Anna was pregnant with our now 6-month-old son, Archie. And it was in those moments of really just that joy that God really began to revitalize that dream in my heart of owning my own business. And so I really began to walk through that path and see where it was laying out. And God placed one of my very good friends in that path. And he had actually owned an e-commerce online business, and he was selling on Amazon. And I remember he talked to me about how it would work and what it looks like to sell on Amazon. And I remember thinking like, well, that sounds like promising, but I'm not really sure if that's like the business that I want to get into. So I started doing it as like a side hustle. And I quickly realized that it was extremely, extremely effective. And so as I began doing it as a side hustle, and we felt this transition in kind of our career, our journey, where we were currently living, it sort of became more of a full-time job. And as I began to walk that out, God began to really just lay out our path. And so shortly after that, it was actually a year ago in August, we made a shift to join a church plant. And I took on the full-time role of owning an online business. And so in January of this year, we made the move to Fishers, where we are part of the church plant. And really since then, the business has it's been absolutely incredible. So a short background of my business. So I sell full-time online on Amazon. And the past year, it's really been incredible. But lately, as we all know, we've been in this pandemic, and there's this thing that they're calling the COVID effect for online sellers, and the business has really just boomed since this has all taken place. And I've really just seen how that verse, I don't know if you're familiar with the verse, there's a verse in the Bible and it says that God works all things out for the good of those who love him. And as I've been like thinking through of this season of having a new baby and really just experiencing that journey, and then joining a church plant, and then being shut down in quarantine, but our business thriving, God has truly worked out all things for the good of those who love him. And it has been an incredible journey for us. And so we made that transition in January to Fishers, and I've been full-time in my Amazon business since August. And so that's kind of the background of what that journey looks like for my business. And so any questions that I can answer, I know that Nee's going to come back on here in just a moment to follow up with a few questions about the business. But I do want to share that I have my Amazon business, but I also have a coaching business that I do. And I really just help people get established and get going in their own e-commerce business. And I've really found out that one of the biggest hurdles in starting your own business, maybe you have a business that you want to start, or you have this like dream of something that you want to launch, is the knowing your why. And I think it's one of the biggest factors and biggest components, and we can talk more about that. But essentially what that looks like is, for me, whenever I decided to launch into this business, it was more of why am I doing this? Why am I passionate about it? And it became my family, right? Like I now have a son, and I just want to be able to give as much time and attention to my family as possible. And if I can own a business to set aside that time to accomplish that why, then I'm going to do it, and I'm going to chase it. So that's just a little piece of encouragement as Nee gets ready to come back on, is just really to understand your why, to know your why, and to chase it daily.
Awesome. Hey, Andrew, thanks so much. I'm really excited to dive a little bit deeper into this, because I think this is so fascinating. One of the big questions I think a lot of people have when you start talking about e-commerce, right? People oftentimes are really nervous, right? Because it breaks the traditional 9 to 5, 8 to 4 kind of job. So for you, what were some of those mental hurdles that you had to kind of get past for you to kind of step into where you're at now?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with the Enneagram at all, I am a 7. And essentially what that means is I love to start new things, very spontaneous, let's try this or let's go here. And so one of the biggest hurdles personally for me was, okay, if I'm going to commit to this, it's going to be more than just like, this is a cool idea that I can start. No, I'm going to have to actually invest into this. And so I'm going to have to remove that part of, I guess, my core, my personality, and understand that, like, if I'm going to take care of my family, like, I'm going to have to overcome this hurdle of moving on to something else and just really stick to it. So that was the biggest struggle for me. And I mean, we can dive deeper and deeper into that, but I would say that was the number one thing, is just, I got to be focused in this.
Yeah. So who are you kind of like is there like a model? Like, I know you're coaching. Did you have a coach? Like, I know there's people like, if you know into marketing, someone like Gary Vee, who's like super popular in mainstream right now, who's always talking about e-commerce and marketing and things like that. Are there people that you listen to that you're inspired by, or maybe even practically like a coach that kind of walked you through this process?
Yeah. So one of my very best friends, he was the one who really got me started into this. He had been doing it for about 2 years before, and really just walked me through kind of that process of what it looked like, and really just showed me the ropes. And that was the biggest factor for me. And that's kind of like why in my heart, I know there's a lot of people that, man, they would love to, not that it's not a good thing, but there's a lot of people that would love to drop the 9 to 5, and they would love to have their own hours and flexibility. And, that's kind of like my mission, is like, somebody did this for me and came alongside of me. So yeah, I want to come alongside somebody else. And so for me, it was, one of my very best friends, but there's also several communities that I've just kind of placed myself in to learn as much as possible. And that's been a huge key for the growth of my business, is every day I'm trying to learn something new. And you could you could ask Anna, if I'm watching something on my phone, it's probably related to, how can I continue to grow an online business? How can I get better at this? And so I would say, just involving, if there's a area that you're passionate about, involve yourself in a community that is doing it and gets it, and ask questions. And that would be, I think that's the biggest coach that you can have. And sure, you can have personal coaches, you can get people who will work with you one-on-one, but man, just getting a part of a community will really take it to the next level.
What are some misconceptions about e-commerce? I feel like, sometimes we all see people who are selling stuff online, games and jokes about, like these kind of pyramid-y type schemes, and you're like, everything kind of gets lumped into the same kind of thing when you start talking about e-commerce. obviously, me knowing you for a long time, I know it's nothing like that. But what are some misconceptions when you tell people like, hey, this is what I do, this is how I make a living, this is how I provide for my family? What are some misconceptions that you kind of have to like navigate through, or kind of be like, no, hey, it's actually not like this at all?
Yeah, whenever I first heard of selling online, of selling products online, I really thought like, I don't want to be seen as like an online garage sale, right? Like I don't want to be seen as like somebody who's just like selling like some, used shoes or used books online. Like if I'm going to make this like my full-time career in business, then, but it's so much more than that. It is not like you would think. So a lot of people, whenever they buy something off of Amazon, which is really funny, they think that they're buying, hey, I'm buying from Amazon, but truthfully, about 80 to 90% of the time, you're actually buying from a business through Amazon. So Amazon becomes the middleman to your business. And a lot of people think it's the other way around, that well, I'm the middleman for Amazon. And that's what I love about this business is it's so, you really are the owner of your business. And I feel like that's a misconception a lot of times is, well, if I sell online, like it's not really my business. No, it actually is.
I love that. How has, and I want to ask this question, then we can get to some user questions. How have you seen this business give you the freedom of the things? I know you talked about transition and journey. Obviously, I know all about your story and your journey, but for those who don't know, you don't necessarily have to go into it, but how has that given you freedom as you're starting a new family and things like that?
Yeah, well, it really has been just, I guess, like life-changing in that fact, because I had always done like a 9 to 5, go into an office or, go into the pizza place and make pizza. Like you have set hours, like all that sort of stuff. And so having this shift has really just like, I guess, like opened my eyes to the potential to be able to really just make your schedule as flexible as possible. So like for me, one of the really cool things is we just had a son, and now here we are in the middle of a pandemic. And it could be really hard to navigate that if you also, I feel like, man, for people who have to go into an office and they're trying to navigate like this current situation with COVID, and then they have a younger family, it's like, how? But thankfully, like for me, one of the biggest blessings has been, there's just been such a big effect of people buying online that because of the growth of our business, I've been able to hire a couple packers. I have somebody who does like product research. So really, actually, what's really cool is I watch our son 4 days of the week. Like I get to be home with him, watch him, take care of him. Yeah. And I can't say I'm called to always be a stay-at-home dad, because there's moments where I'm like, man, this is tough. But it has been one of the most rewarding thing that I get to say, you know what, if I want to work 2 hours today, or if I want to work from, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., or if I can set it. And so it's just given a lot of fluidity to our life as a family.
I love that. Here's a couple questions. Andrew, do you see yourself running an Amazon business for the rest of your career, or do you have other business ideas in mind?
I definitely have other business ideas that I would love to do, but I definitely want, if Amazon will last me my full career, I'm not sure exactly how Amazon will look 20, 30 years from now. If it's there and if it's profitable, yes, I'll still do it. I would love for my kids to be able to grow up understanding a business model, being able to work in that, and being able to have their own flexible schedules like that. That would be an incredible dream to see happen. And so, yeah, as long as possible, but there are some other business ideas. I love coaching. I love helping people. There's lots of things I want to do.
3 days. Kind of along that coaching line, someone asked, what are the legal things needed to make an online coaching business? I don't know how detailed you can get, but what are the legal things needed to start an online coaching business?
Yeah, so you can get as business oriented as you want. I mean, truthfully, you can just charge somebody through PayPal and just give a service to them. Like there's a lot of like minimal things to do to kind of have like a surface coaching business. And but then you could scale that to getting a limited liability company, so you're not liable if somebody were to sue your company. Like those things are good, but just starting out, yeah, you can honestly just have somebody PayPal, Cash App, like you're just providing service to somebody.
Right.
So it's pretty simple to get into.
Yeah. Okay. So someone asked, how do you set good boundaries when you don't have set hours? Is it easier or more difficult than working 9 to 5?
It's definitely more difficult. It is so easy because the thing is, whenever you start a business, you're more than likely starting something you're passionate about. For me, I love, providing service and really providing for my family through financially. And so seeing those like numbers grow, it can be incredibly, I guess, like energizing and also like addicting to like see where your business is at. And so it's easy to work a ton of time. So what I do, and one of the biggest keys that I found starting out was simply creating a schedule. So yeah, I might not work 9 to 5, but I know, okay, tomorrow I'm going to work 9 to 10, and then I'm going to work 2 to 7, just setting those up. So I have, for anybody, this is like really practical, but I use the Full Focus Planner by Michael Hyatt.
Wonderful.
I absolutely love it. It is so good. But it has appointment times. It has your biggest 3 things that you need to accomplish. So that really helps keep me on track to not do too much, but not to just become lazy and not do anything. So it really helps keep me focused.
2 more questions. I'm going to wrap up here. One of the things that's really a theme for tonight is this idea of dreams becoming reality, right? So for you, as you're, you started off talking about, little Andrew with a lemonade stand to now where you are, what advice would you give to someone who's like, hey, I have this dream. I'm not sure what to do with it, but I just need a little extra push. What would you say to that person?
I would say take every moment, like every free moment. If you're passionate about something and you want to start something, take every moment that you have, free moment, and really try to put pen to paper. Get your ideas out there. Start writing down thoughts. If you have some free time, instead of, chilling on Netflix, read about that dream, read about how to start that business. And that's one of the things that I love doing, even now after this business has already grown to where it is really just continuing to learn. So, one of the best things that I heard is somebody said, well, when was the best time to start an online business? And they said, well, it was probably 20 years ago. And they said, but the best time to start a business is today. And then tomorrow it will. So don't keep pushing it off. Just start rolling it out, start putting pen to paper, put those dreams down, and really let that kind of give you motivation to move forward. Because if you're like, well, I'll start putting this into action next week or next year, it's just going to keep being next. So, start today.
Yeah. One final question we like to ask all of our guests. This is obviously community and culture night, and the goal is just to bring gather people together to have interesting conversation and to learn from really interesting people who are doing really interesting things. So community is a big part of what we're trying to do and build, even as we're trying to navigate a global pandemic. But we just want to know from you, what does community mean to you, and what does it look like for you?
Yeah, it's honestly has been the biggest component of, I would say, every part of our life. So as I shared earlier, we recently moved to Fishers in January, and we got connected immediately to the community of the church plant that we're a part of. And that's been so life-giving that it's really, because to be honest, I've heard so much of people who have been in quarantine and they've now struggled with, isolation and feeling lonely. And what has been such a blessing for us is that during these times, we had that community to kind of lean back against and really just to kind of do life with. So that would be personally. And then, like I said earlier, for my business, community I think it's vitally the most important thing for my business. It keeps my business pulsing and growing because I'm constantly learning from others. The do's and the don'ts of business and I'm finding that through just connecting in communities that are like-minded and moving in the same direction.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, hey, thanks so much, man. I loved this. It was so great hearing your story and what you're passionate about, and it 100% came through. Where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, maybe get connected with online coaching and kind of go from there?
Yeah, for sure. If you want to talk through that, talk through whatever, you can connect on Instagram, Andrew W. McGuire. I'll drop it in the comments. And then also Facebook is fine as well. I do have an email if anybody uses that. It's my Instagram handle, Andrew W. McGuire, but it's at gmail.com. So any of those ways, I'd love to connect with you. We can set up a call. We can just chat. So anyways, let me know. That'd be awesome just to hear about your passion and dream.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Andrew. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was awesome. And I really kind of want to run through a brick wall and start my own business. I don't know if I can, but I'm definitely going to, I definitely want to for sure. If you guys have any questions, like we said, feel free to reach out to Andrew. We'll make sure that we post the contact information for him after tonight's session. Next up is the other half of McGuire family. We're so excited to bring Anna on. She just started a brand new podcast. And so I'm so excited to chat with her a little bit more about what's going on, what does that look like, how she started, and just share a little bit more what's on her heart as another dream turns into reality. So we're going to bring Anna on here in a couple seconds. So I hope you guys enjoy. Hey, Anna, what's going on? Oh, I think you're muted, baby.
I totally am. Sorry about that. Hey.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I am so excited to chat with you. I know, like I said, I've known you for a while now. We've had conversations about what is now in actual physical form, this podcast, and I'm so excited because even just listening to the very first episode, I think it's going to be so life-giving for a lot of different people, and I'm really excited just to chat with you a little bit more. But for those who don't know you, before we jump into what we want to talk about today, could you just give a little background of who you are, why you're here?
So I'm Anna. I graduated in May of 2019 from Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, IUPUI, with my master's in school counseling and mental health counseling. I am a school counselor here in the suburbs of Indianapolis. And on top of that, I get to serve on the pastoral team at a church plant in Fishers, Indiana, which is so awesome. In addition to all those things, I do a podcast, I write, I get to communicate and speak from time to time at different places throughout the area, throughout the region, really throughout, just around. And I'm a mom. That's kind of a new thing. I feel like I need to throw that in there because if I mumble or stumble on my words, you have to know I got 5 hours of sleep last night because I have a teething 6-month-old. So that's really crazy.
Archie's definitely worth it though because he's a cute kid.
He is adorable. I'm not going to lie. I honestly think, I know it's every mom's thing, but I'm my kid is so cute. It's people ask me, how's your baby? I'm you want to see a picture? That's literally my default. And I'm I've become that woman.
No one ever thinks they will until it happens to you. And then it just happens by default.
Yeah. I'm ready for the minivan. I legitimately I think a minivan would be so much easier than this car, blah, blah, blah. And Andrew's no,
No.
You're not. And I'm really, I just feel this deeply. We need a minivan.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So I kind of want to take it back. Obviously, you mentioned there are a lot of things that you're involved in, you love to do. But I kind of want to focus, just zoom in a little bit on the podcast. Especially it just came out. I'm really excited to talk a little about it. But kind of going back for you, what was the genesis of you saying hey, I want to start a podcast, and then kind of specifically leaning into kind of what you're wanting to dive into with the theme of this podcast?
So honestly, I started listening to podcasts when I was in college, and there was multiple moments while listening to podcasts that I thought to myself, I could do this. When I was in middle school and in high school, prior to really thinking about church leadership or counseling, I actually wanted to study political communication. My dream was to be a political news correspondent in Washington, D.C. I wanted to work for BBC. That's what I wanted to do. That's where I wanted to work. but then my heart began to change because I thought, well, I want to help people. I love to communicate. I like to write. So like I'm called to be this like political news correspondent. Maybe I'll turn into like a politician. I don't know. But then as I began to like look more introspectively, it's like, oh, I'm called to like counsel and like pastor people. So I started that like dream of like, I guess like production has always been in my life. But then in college, I really started listening to podcasts and I thought, this is really easy. Like people like just record their voices and they listen to you. Like you don't like have to like have like super fancy
Not
equipment.
bad, dude. Right.
Yeah. So that really began there. And then after college, I had talked about it for years. I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast. And then I was like, I'm really going to start a podcast. And that was about 2 years ago. And I started like putting in the groundwork and I was like, I'm going to do this. As actually, I went over to your apartment and like interviewed you on like how to be like a good communicator and what is like super sticky in our culture. Like I was like ready for it. And Rachel, your wife, she's got that marketing background. I'm like, well, how do I like approach this? And you guys gave me like so much wisdom. So I was like full steam ahead. And I was really planning on launching the podcast a year ago. And just before everything was about to launch, I just began to sense that I needed to stop, which was like shocking for me because like that is not my default. My default is excessive schedule. Like that's kind of like I go until like I hit the wall. And I hadn't hit the wall. But if you listened to Andrew share just a few moments ago, that was when I was pregnant. We were in a big transition, moving cities, all of that. And so I just decided to pause. And there was a lot that I needed to learn before jumping in. The podcast title is So What? And that really comes with the idea of what are you sowing into your life? Like, what is it that you are producing in your life? I based it off of a truth that I found in the Bible, and that's 2 Corinthians 6:9. It says, those who sow sparingly reap sparingly, but those who sow bountifully reap bountifully. Well, I want to reap bountifully in my life. I want to reap abundantly. I want good things in my life, but I needed to practice that for me first. So really just had to take it slow. And then about a month or two ago, Andrew and I were driving to Little Rock, Arkansas, and he was like, it's time. Like I've had the cover art forever. He's like, it's time. He's like, you can do this. Like, I really believe in you. And so I just like was like, all right. And I literally posted it on Instagram and Facebook like 20 minutes later.
Oh, wow.
And I
literally just like that.
Yeah, literally, that's like what happened. Like I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like launch it, and I really was actually gonna launch it in May, but I felt like it would have been really selfish and insensitive for me personally to have done that, to pursue that in May. I felt like social media served as a really great platform for an awareness of racism, police brutality, the things that exist in our culture. And I just thought to try to launch my podcast during that time would have been really insensitive, really selfish. And I was like, that's lame. The social media platforms need to be solely for this right now. And so anyways, I just like kind of paused it and I was like, okay, I'll get back to it eventually. And then Andrew's like, let's do it. So yeah, like within like 20 minutes, I posted it and I was like, so people are like, when can we subscribe? When is it coming? I'm like, I'll get back to you.
We just roll. So I want to pause just for a second because, we always joke. We've known each other for a while now, well, actually since college, and we always joke about being really similar. And so this idea of like pausing, especially when you have a dream, and then all of a sudden you just kind of feel like you need to hit the brakes. Could you just dive into that for a second? Because I think that serves as a really good transition for you to kind of briefly talk about the very first episode where you kind of set the stage, this idea of being vulnerable, of like knowing your feelings and things like that, and really diving into that and how that serves a purpose for, say, like kind of laying the foundation in the soil to really sow good things. So if you could talk just a little bit about that transitional period where you're like, hey, I just feel like you need to take a break, and what that did for you to get you to be where you are so that dream didn't happen premature.
That's good. So according to culture standards, I was super good at self-care. Like I worked out multiple times a week. I ate decently healthy. I had quality time with friends, family. Um, but as I began to sense this need to pause, I realized that for so many years I was going at such a high speed that I had been disconnected with how I was really doing. Now, I wasn't depressed or dealing with like significant mental health issues, but I was really at a spot where I was like, I'm kind of a stranger to me. Like,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
don't
Definitely.
want
Yeah.
this next season of my life, where I'm becoming a mom or really like, you know, launching this business, coming alongside of Andrew in that area and not know who I am and who I want to become. And so, really, I had to take that season where I had to start naming my emotions
Right.
and really coming to terms with how I was feeling. Prior to that season, Andrew and I had walked through some really difficult things. And I didn't realize that I had so much bitterness and frustration and anger inside of me. And so I had to pause and really reflect on those things and do the hard work of uprooting those things so that they didn't stay inside of me and so that they didn't affect everything else I did. So, yeah, not natural at all. And yeah, us being similar, I know that we know this, but I don't like necessarily naming negative feelings inside
Yeah.
of me. I'd rather just be like, it's fine, we're good. Not feeling great, but I'm not going to call that jealousy.
Keep going.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
I'm name those things. And so the first episode of So What, I just kind of talk about that journey of self-care, but really in the sense of self-awareness. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times we think of self-care as like the bubble bath and
Glass of
your
wine is
favorite,
about that. Yep.
yeah, and like your Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah.
But self-care is really a self-awareness and understanding what you need. And I had no understanding of what I needed. And so in the first episode, I just kind of walk through that journey and then give some practical steps for how all of us can become more self-aware and check in with ourselves on a weekly basis.
I we could talk about this forever because I think that that's such a healthy conversation. But I do want to ask some other questions. In terms of your second week just dropped, I think yesterday maybe.
Today.
So I don't want to give it away, but if you could just give a little preview. You kind of already shared a little bit about the first episode, so you give us a little preview of what to expect for this episode that just dropped.
So my most recent one is called Why I Won't Work More Than 45 Hours a Week. Which again is like a total like life transition for me. How I really believe that like workaholism is just wrong on so many levels. But it's so normal and it's so
Celebrated,
accepted.
right? Yep.
And when we talk about addiction, we always talk about like substances or vices, but we never talk about work. And yet, like all of us kind of live in this realm of like being addicted to success. And so just repainting like what success is and also figuring out what is most important to you. So in this one, I talk about priorities, but not like priorities in like the ambiguous way. I talk about personal priorities, relational priorities, recreational priorities, and work priorities. And so really being specific, because specific boundaries help keep your busyness not to control you, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Well, if that does not get you so excited to listen to the first couple episodes, I don't know what else will. And then we'll make sure you give us an opportunity to tell us where we can listen to your podcast. But for you, what's been the best part, or maybe the most interesting part for you about starting and now hosting this podcast? Maybe something you weren't expecting.
So one thing that I am really enjoying is connecting with people. I know that sounds like super cliche, but it's the truth. And you're like, how are you connecting with people? Like you're the speaker and they're the listener, whatever. But I have just found over the last like week and a half, I have been able to just connect with individuals that I haven't before or reconnect with people I haven't talked to in a long time. So that has been super fun. Another thing that I'm really enjoying is really challenging myself to be more creative. So like you know, you get that first episode out there, you're like, yeah. And then it's like, okay, I got to do this again in like 7 days. And you're like, wow. And
Yeah.
so I really feel like I'm flexing a part of my creativity, but also a part of like my vulnerability that I haven't done in a long time. Like I'm really kind of looking inward, like thinking about myself, like, okay, I'm 27-year-old, working, pursuing success, have a family. What is it that I want to hear? Like when I'm on my commute, what are the things that I want to talk about? And so it's been really cool, and also collaborating with friends, like, what do you want to hear? And so the creativity part and the connecting with people has been awesome.
What would you say has been instrumental, and maybe a better way to kind of frame this is, well, I guess what's been instrumental, and then also are there places that you go to that you read, or maybe podcasts you listen to, or books that kind of help you tune into culture to kind of give you a creative edge on where you want to go next?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. A couple of things that like I really press into, like some voices that I really trust is Bob Goff, the Dream Big podcast. Love him. He asks questions in a way that makes you like feel like a child again, but in like the best sense. Like anything is possible. And I want people whenever they walk away from a conversation with me to feel that same way, like anything is possible. You're awesome. Like I want that kind of energy to come from like conversations that I have with people.
Yeah.
Another is Jenna Kutcher, Gold Digger. Like I have like no desire to like have like a photography business or like some like multi-million dollar thing like she coaches on, like multi-million dollar empire. But she is so inspiring and she's a great communicator. Love her. My recent addiction, you guys, I'm just gonna throw this out there. If you want to hear like what I'm going to be talking about in part, you need to listen to the Stop, Hustle, and Hurry podcast.
Woo, come on, let's go.
Nee did a teaching on this in the very first Comedian Culture Night from one of the books of the podcast hosts. Guys,
Game changer.
I have re-listened to this podcast. It's 10 episodes. I have re-listened to it so many times. It is so stinking good. And it has been that this is where a lot of the language that I've been like putting to like I won't work more than 45 hours a week, becoming more self-aware, silence, taking care of yourself, is a lot of it's coming from this podcast. It is phenomenal. I wish I could just like not say like, yeah, this is all me. Like I'm doing this all on my own. I'm just this smart. But I'm telling you, that podcast is phenomenal.
So good.
Like it's like you need to listen to it multiple times to really dig into it.
I need to do it again. I'm literally writing a sermon and I'm using part of what I got from the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Like it's just the information gives you just never stop. Like every time you hear it, you're just like, it just hits you differently every single time.
Yes, it's so good. So
good. Well, we can talk a little bit more. I do have one question before we get to questions. I see some questions coming up. What advice would you give to future podcaster, author, speaker? What's kind of the first piece of advice you would give to someone who's like, hey, Anna, I want to step into this space?
This is going to sound like whiny, but I don't mean it in that way at all. You need to have your people, like your cheerleaders, your unconditional supporters, your wildly awesome encouragers, because when you put yourself on a platform like YouTube, podcasting, whatever it may be, even if it's like in person that you're doing something, it's an open invitation for criticism. And again, I don't mean that in like a whiny way. It's just reality. Like people are like behind a keyboard, like, or a phone, and they can say whatever and however they want. And you're like, oh, your podcast is a week old. You haven't had any negative feedback. Actually, I have, and it's been 1 week. And so I would say have your people and make sure that your identity and your worth is tied to the things that the people who love you the most say about you. And then also to help you to keep humble as well. But I would say listen to the voices that love you the most above any other voice. Like listen to your best friend, your significant other, whoever it may be, your parent, your sibling, listen to their voice above any other voice. But I'd say before you even get started, like have like set affirmation of who you are. And I know that sounds like whiny, but I mean, it just kind of comes with it, I would say.
I think people love the idea of it until it actually starts happening, right? And then there's the criticism and people aren't really prepared for it.
Yeah, Absolutely.
So some questions people ask: what hardware and software do you use to record your podcast?
So my in-laws, they are amazing. Andrew had told them Anna wants to start this podcast. And so they actually bought me a microphone for Christmas this last year. It's one that was like $40 on Amazon. Cause I ended up looking it up because I was like looking for a different thing. So it's like, there's like, you can get microphones that are like $1,000. You can get some that are like 10. This one is just like a pretty basic model. So I use that, plug it right into my Mac. And then I use, Buzzsprout. It's the podcast host. So this is the fun part. I use voice memos on my Mac. I literally record it on there. And then there's this software called Adobe Audition. I just had to get a cue from my husband. So Adobe Audition, and I pasted in there, and then I went on YouTube and I found a royalty-free song, and you cut it down and you copy and paste it at the beginning of it, and then you export it and you upload it to Buzzsprout, and it sends it to whatever platforms you want. So in my case, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and Google.
That's simple.
It's pretty simple, actually. It really is that simple.
That's cool.
I'm like not good at technology at all, and it's pretty simple.
That's what I do. So, of course, somebody asked, what themes in your podcast tie all your episodes and feature episodes together? I feel like it would be hard to narrow down a bunch of topics, which is true. I could totally see that. A lot of people have one really good idea, but then to have a whole season's worth of ideas that actually make sense and kind of come cohesively is a lot difficult.
So the biggest theme that ties it all together is this idea of sowing intentionally so that we can reap abundantly. I believe that all of our lives, I know circumstances and systems that we live in do dictate some of the outcomes of our life, but at the end of the day, we have choices to make that affect the overall experience of our lives. And so my big thing with every single podcast is going to be what choice, what next step can you make? Simple choice that you can sow seeds, intentional seeds that would bring about a harvest that you're going to enjoy, that's going to bring about healthy relationships, a strong mental health, things that are going to bring about a good rhythm-paced schedule. So really, all of them will be tied together with what's the next step for you? What is the achievable, doable next step? Like, what's this simple thing you can do so that you can reap abundantly and not just reap things that are just like passive, but reap things that are awesome and great and really not only benefit you, but benefit those around you.
Wonderful. Someone asked, Anna, I'm sure that there are people out there that would love to start their own pod, but they're battling so many, voices or the thought of there's so many voices out there. Did you have that thought? How did you overcome it? And own what you bring to your audience?
Yeah, so that's like a huge thing for me. I'm like, Joyce Meyer has a podcast. Like Beth Moore has a podcast. Dr. Caroline Leaf, a neuropsychologist that I deeply respect, has a podcast. Why I don't? They're like, I am. Who am I? Like I'm not enough for that. And it really came down to Andrew, just my husband, speaking some like specific life in me. And he said, like, you have a voice and you have passion, like put that like into it. Like, who cares? Like if you've got like one listener or 100 listeners, like use your voice, like you're passionate. And so I was like, yeah, like that's sweet, honey. Thank you so much. And then I did a free masterclass. That was actually an Instagram ad on my Instagram. And, the teacher of it, her name was like Taylor. She's from Australia. I have no clue who she is. I literally did this free like thing because I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And she said something so good. She said, if you went to a conference and you spoke and were able to have a great conversation with 5 people, would you walk away from that conference feeling encouraged? Like that was successful? And I was like, absolutely. If I went to a conference and I got to like connect with 5 people, I would be like, that was awesome. She said, so if you have 5 listeners, she said, that's the same thing. That is somebody that you got to have an intentional and rich conversation with. So don't wait for 100 or 1,000 listeners. If you have 5 listeners, she said, that is 5 heartfelt connection conversations that you were able to have. And I was like, that's it. That's my goal. If 5 people will listen every week, then that's enough. because that's 5 people I was able to have a conversation with. Like throughout the week, how many times can I connect with 5 people? Actually, I can't. And so once you put it in that terms, I was like, whoa, 5 people. So that was really huge for me to start like, to overcome that thought that like my voice doesn't matter. That it's just like one in a sea of many places. But another thing that I learned from Jenna Kutcher is that podcasts and blogs, a lot of people think they're dying. They're actually growing faster than any other platform right now. Like we think of like YouTube or TikTok, actually podcasts and blogs are still growing faster, and the engagement on them is still growing. And then this is another side note. Andrew and I watched this training with, I can't remember his name. He's like the life coach guru. And he was talking about how, like self-education, so blogs and podcasts, that the tide is rising, and they think by like 2022 that it's going to be like an $18 billion a year industry.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like crazy. Not that we're like looking to make money off of it, but he was just like affirming, like, so there's space for you. Like when the analogy he gave, he said, because like the tide, he said, like if you're a sailboat, like when the wind comes in, like it doesn't matter how many sailboats are, like the wind takes it and all the boats will move. And so, yeah, like if you're in it, like it's going to move forward.
Right. Okay, that is incredible. Awesome. Thanks so much. I want to wrap up. I wish we could stay on this a little bit longer, but we do need to wrap up. So like I said, this is the same question we ask to all of our guests. What does community mean to you, and what does it look like?
So if there's one thing that I've been learning in this season is this idea of unconditional love. And I want to be a person of unconditional love. I want to give unconditional love just as much as I want to receive unconditional love. And one thing that I've been finding in my most healthy communities is this unconditional love. Now, that doesn't mean it's like unconditional agreement on things or unconditional, I don't know, like forming together, like we're all the same, but it's just no matter what you do, no matter what you choose, no matter where you are, no matter what place you find yourself in, I love you. And I'm finding more and more that like my most healthy communities are made up of unconditional love. And so that's what community means to me right now. And that's how I'm experiencing it. And that I'm really enjoying trying to be more of an unconditional loving person.
Well, Anna, thank you so much again for being a part of this. I loved hearing your story. Loved hearing how a dream, again, is turned into reality. It means so much to be able to share some of your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a huge honor.
Absolutely. So really quick, where can people find you, get connected with you, hear your podcast? Where can they go? Give us all the details.
So my podcast is called So What, SOW What, So What, and that can be found on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And you can connect with me on Instagram, Mrs. MRS Anna McGuire. My email is the same, mrsannamcguire@gmail.com. I'd love to connect with you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Anna. We really appreciate having you.
Thanks, Nee. You're awesome.
Hey guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this particular session of Community Culture Night. What an honor to hear from the McGuires. If you don't know them, get to know them, connect with them on Instagram. They are fantastic people. More than anything, I really hope that you leave tonight feeling inspired to go after your dreams. We all have dreams inside of us, and I hope that this gives you an opportunity to pursue them with reckless abandon and know that you have a community here to help you no matter what you're looking for, no matter what you're doing. As we go into September, we'll keep you updated. Our team has talked about what does it look like to maybe meet in person, but we just feel out of an abundance of caution, we're just going to hold off on that. So as things move along, we'll keep you going, but know that we have some really great guests starting to get lined up for September. If you, I know we've been doing this for a few months now, if you're someone that's interested in presenting, if there's something you're really passionate about, something you'd like to share with Community Culture Night, we would love to have you connect with us. Here in the next week or two, we're going to have a form on our Google page where you can actually just fill out and have that sent to us, and we can get together, chat, and see when we can have you on Community Culture Night. So thanks again for being a part of this. We really appreciate this. You guys are awesome. Hope you learned a lot. Thanks for engaging as always, and we will talk to you guys later. Thanks, guys.